Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come step into centuries of history that await in Scotland. Castles steeped in legend walk along cobblestone streets. Come share the warmth of stories passed down through generations. This is a place with a past that is fully present today and all yours to explore. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Hello and welcome back to Off the Record on Tudor's Dynasty and Beyond. I'm Rebecca Larson.
And I'm Amy McElroy.
And well, you know what day it is, right? Together, it's Sunday.
It's Sunday.
Okay, we didn't practice.
You didn't even tell me we were going to do that. So.
You know what? I'm just flying by the seat of my pants today. You just don't know what I'm going to do. This is
going to be an interesting one, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's hot. It's hot where you are. It's hot where I am. And clearly it's frying our brain cells.
Yes.
We are in a lot of trouble today. No, not we. You guys. You guys are in a lot of trouble today.
Everyone else has got to listen to us.
Yeah, just blather on about nothing.
Everyone, in advance.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so last week we did the third part in our historical TV series. That was a little redundant, but I didn't know what else to call it. And we did House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. And we are recording a day earlier today, so we didn't have as much time to gather comments, but I think we still got a few that you could go over.
We did. So we asked people, if you remember, who their favorite couple was. So Philippa said absolutely loves the show. Thank you. Her favorite couple, Eye and the Hound.
Oh, I do like that one too.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good suggestion. Kerry says she wants a dragon, of course.
Ooh,
Brienne and Jamie were her favourite pairing, but she's not over Jamie having all that growth and then going back to Cersei, which, you know what, that's fair.
Yeah. I think we were all very disappointed in that.
Yeah. Caroline said, I think that you'll probably get this more than me because I've only watched the first series, but she said, I've got a firm belief it's nearly impossible to be both a good person and a good leader. There are times that good leaders need to do things that aren't kind because in the long haul, it's what's best for the people. Viserys in House of Dragon is a good example. He's so sweet and kind and just wants to make everyone happy and not confront issues. But as a king, it was a terrible thing to do. And his inaction is what led to the war that killed his children and grandchildren. Rhaenys would have been able to do what was needed to be done, even if it hurt her loved ones, which is why she should have been queen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some of that we haven't even gotten to yet. So I think season 3 is really where we're going to get to the death of everyone, all because Viserys was the peaceful. I think that's what they called him after he died, Viserys the Peaceful.
And we also asked about who people would save.
Yeah.
So Joni said she would save Rob. Doesn't have a favourite episode, but favourite death. And I can't believe I didn't think of this because this is brilliant. Elena Tyrell.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. I just watched that scene again recently.
She was so smart.
Yeah. And Jamie gives her the cup with the poison in it and she drinks it. And then she admits to being responsible for killing Joffrey.
Yeah. She knew that was poison. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And then Caroline says, can't choose a favourite episode, but I do think Sansa and Tyrion are my favourite couple. Sansa didn't think they'd ever work out, but I disagree. I think she would have eventually felt safe with him and he would have boosted her confidence without having to go through all the trauma she did.
Yeah.
I don't know that she would have ended up as strong and wise as she did without that trauma, but wiser than she started out, which, to be fair, wouldn't be very difficult, would it? Even after their marriage ended, he was loyal to her. I could see them doing what they ended up doing in the end, but with one of them traveling to spend a month or two with each other a few times a year and being happy with that.
No.
So, and then when there's some of the comments about loving dragons and things. So,
Why wouldn't
one that
you?
you probably won't like. So, Marla or Malas? I can't tell because it's all one word. Says Littlefinger is kind of like Seymour with Sansa as a young Elizabeth.
Yeah, I saw that one. I was like, do I comment on that one? Do I not? I'll just let it go.
Yeah.
And this is like my motivation to finish the book and get it out so that people can see the truth. You know,
Hmm.
if I can get the evidence out there, it's going to take a long time to shake this reputation that he has gained over the centuries. It's going to
Yeah.
take a long time. So I've learned. I used to argue with people and debate with them on the whole thing. And then I thought, what are you doing? Like, they haven't read the same documents that I've read. So it's unfair for me to assume that they're going to change their mind just because I told them to.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with that. It's kind of like Richard III, right? People either love him or they hate him, and you
Yeah.
can't change people's minds necessarily.
Yeah,
You
there's
could,
always going to be different perceptions of, even if two people read the same piece of evidence, there's always going to be
yeah,
different interpretations of that evidence. So that's what history is. So
yeah. I think this with Thomas Seymour, the point I am trying to make, or the thing I'm trying to do, is just to put the evidence out there
mm,
because nobody has seen any of the evidence before. Like, this is who he is. Now you decide.
mm,
You decide, is he this evil villain who groomed Elizabeth, or was he just this ambitious man who was searching for power like every other ambitious man at court?
hmm.
So that's where we're at with that. But yeah, I love the comments. I'm glad
Yeah.
you left that one for last.
Yeah.
I think I saw that one yesterday and I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I know Amy's going to bring this one up and we'll just go with it. Because it's true.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about the whole thing. So today we're not doing any historical TV series. We're not doing any films. We're kind of going back to like the old school interview stuff because just because Amy is my co-host on Off the Record doesn't mean I can't interview her anymore. I was kind
Feel
of
like I'm walking into an interrogation now.
I just hold the light in your face.
Yeah.
Well, you've been working on your next book,
Yeah.
and that one's going to be due out sometime this year, or is it next year?
Early next year.
Okay, all right. So she is like feverishly working on getting this book completed. So this stuff is all fresh in her mind. And today we're going to look at a figure from history that I think most of you will recognize the name, and that is John Cheke or
Yeah.
Sheik or whatever you want to call him.
Yes. That's the one.
That's the guy. And
Yeah.
and when we talked about this, I said to her, I was like, this is the guy that is responsible for having the names put on Holbein's portraits, right?
Yeah.
So he is the one that we have to thank or not thank for
In
labeling
some
these.
cases, yes.
Is it or isn't it the person that he said it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. That's one of those tough situations too, because obviously he lived during the time, so you would assume that he would know the faces, but he's also human.
Yeah.
And how many times in your life have you met somebody once and then you're supposed to remember what their face looked like? Decades
Exactly.
later, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about John Cheke. Who was he? Who is this guy? Where did he come from? And go.
So he was born in 1514. He was born to Peter Cheke and Agnes Duffield. And he was born in Cambridge, but his family had their roots in the Isle of Wight. His father moved to Cambridge. He had a really good education, so he went to St. John's College in Cambridge, and he basically took to it like a duck to water. So he swiftly moved through getting his bachelor's degree. He was admitted as a fellow. He got his Master of Arts. And he's very much known for being of the reformer side of things with religion, which obviously could be quite difficult I'm talking like 1530s, early 1540s by this point. But he didn't step out of line. So the one thing that we do see first go wrong in his life is, this bit isn't wrong. He was appointed in 1540 as the Regius Professor of Greek at the University of Cambridge, which is obviously quite impressive.
Yeah.
Henry VIII appointed him himself. So, he already had royal favour by that point. But he came into conflict with Stephen Gardiner a couple of years later.
Ugh, I hate him.
I know, I cannot stand that man. So Cheke was very much a humanist. So he believed in going backwards. Basically, he took everything on board that Erasmus said and ran with it. So he went back to original sources, and he believed that the Greek that was being taught at the time, although Greek wasn't majorly popular, it was becoming more and more popular. He believed that there'd been so many mistakes made across translations, a bit like Erasmus when he rewrote the New Testament, that in order to get the pronunciation right, you had to go back to the source. So that's what he did. And he started teaching Greek in a different format.
Oh.
Gardner did not like that. And at this time, he was Chancellor of the university. And there's letters between them, and you can see that, like, Gardner literally wants to bite his head off, so to speak. He's rude, but in a very sly way, if that makes sense. So he starts his letters off like, as a friend, I'm just telling you. And then as the letters continue, it's, as Chancellor of the University, you will do what I say. And Cheke is kind of like, yeah, but no. So eventually this argument reaches Henry. And Henry pretty simply goes, he's the Greek professor.
Yeah.
So Cheke actually gets his own way, which Gardner does not like. But around this time is when the colleges of the university are kind of splitting. So you've got disputes going on between the reformers and the Catholics. And it's becoming more and more difficult, like the politics of colleges. Cheke manages to escape in 1544. He's actually appointed as tutor to Edward VI, well, the future Edward VI, along with Richard Cox. Now, Richard Cox had a very, very busy workload. So he was being sent all over the place, and Henry realised that he needed somebody more stable, I guess, more consistent. So he was originally appointed to support Cox, but basically took on the bulk of the work.
Okay.
So he's away from Cambridge, but he retains his position as professor. So he is still involved in the politics of the university. But obviously his influence on Edward is second to none. Like, Edward absolutely adores him. You can see later through Edward's letters at one point, Cheke falls ill, dangerously ill. He doesn't think he'll survive. Edward actually sends his own doctors to him.
Wow.
And when somebody actually says to Edward, we need to talk about Cheke because he's not going to survive, Edward turns around and says, no, that's not happening. I prayed for his life today. He'll survive.
Well, that's some confidence from a kid,
Yeah,
huh?
and he does. He does survive. So, who knows? Maybe Edward did have that quiet word with God.
Wow, maybe.
But he survives, but he doesn't come back. Well, he comes back as a tutor for a little bit, but obviously by then Edward is at the age where he's doing his own thing. He doesn't need this formal education anymore. But he does keep Cheke close. So he's a member of his council. He's part of the Privy Chamber. He's very, very close contact to Edward. But obviously, as part of that comes the difficulty. So there is involvement between him and the Seymours. So you've obviously got Edward Seymour, who supports him, is very supportive of his Greek lectures and stuff that he'd been doing. On the flip side, you've got Thomas, who's also friendly with him. But one of the records indicates that it was actually, and you'll know this, when Thomas gives money to Edward at Christmas,
Yeah.
apparently it was done via Cheke. So he
Oh,
gave it to him and said, give half to my nephew. So
yeah.
there was a close relationship, but obviously the difficulties for Cheke are I'm stuck here in the middle because you've got Edward Seymour on one side, Thomas here, and all I want to do is look after young Edward.
Yeah.
So he ends up a bit stuck in the middle. And obviously when Edward dies, Cheke at that point is the principal secretary for the council. So his role is essentially writing down anything that the council are issuing. So one of those things would be announcing Lady Jane Grey as Queen. Now, Cheke was Protestant. He was, there's no doubt about it. So we can only assume that his own personal feelings would have been supportive of Jane. But even if he wasn't, he had to write what the council wanted him to write.
Right. Yeah.
He's not Lord Protector. He's not anything. He's literally just a secretary that's on the council and was part of Edward's Privy Council and a member of his chambers. But he obviously writes the letters that go to Mary. When Mary writes to them and said, I'm claiming the throne, it's Cheke that has to write the reply to that. So it doesn't go too well for him. And he is in the tower with Jane when it all comes crashing down and blah, blah, blah. Now, he does go to the proclamation of Mary. He does go to it. And he attends because obviously that's his duty as a councillor. And I think the bit that I feel bad for him in all of this is that at this time, Cheke is in London dealing with the consequences of all of their actions. Guess where Northumberland is?
Where?
At Cheke's house in Cambridge.
I do not like John Dudley.
So it's literally like he'd just gone, see you, mate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Cheke's actually arrested and put in the tower in prison this time. And he's charged And I think about a few months later, you do see a thaw coming from Mary. And I think obviously she's not stupid. She would have known his religious beliefs. She would have known it. But I think she also realizes that the secretary cannot act of their own accord. They have to write what the council is telling them to write, even if they are a member of that council. And she actually pays £50 towards his expenses in the tower,
Oh,
which is pretty decent of her.
yeah.
He's actually then pardoned, but he knows he's not safe. So he actually asks for leave to go abroad for a year. So he actually secures a license from Mary. Um, and he leaves with Anthony Cook. Um, but he leaves his wife behind. Now his wife is a whole other story. Like her name was Mary Hill, and she was a lot younger than him and seems to have acted a lot younger
Mm.
than him. So she upset Anne Seymour, which she had to write to her and say, I'm really sorry for the way my wife has behaved. And I can't remember what the exact wording is, but he basically just says, she's stupid. That's young and stupid, something like that. But he manages to stay in favour of Anne Seymour before it all goes downhill. But when he leaves, he goes abroad with Anthony Cook. And his intention at the time does not seem to have been to stay abroad, more just get out of here and see what happens.
Mm.
But he goes to like Strasbourg, Padua. He basically goes to visit the places where the Protestant exiles were. And this is where he probably goes a bit wrong. He starts publishing works in favour of the Protestant cause. Um, Now his license was based on him coming back after that time. He was very, very close to William Cecil. So William Cecil was married to his sister,
Oh.
and he'd also taught Cecil at Cambridge, and he maintained contact with him. So he knew what was going on in England. He knew how Protestants were being treated. Um, he knew it wasn't safe, essentially. So he didn't go back. But people like Gardner were not going to let that go.
Of course, that's
Um,
slimy.
and originally they started trying to say he needs to come back, like his license was only for a year, blah blah. And they take all his properties. So well, not so much him because he's not getting money from them anyway while he's abroad. He's having to teach and do whatever to try and scrape by. But obviously the income for his family at home, gone. Like Mary just
Yeah.
it all goes to Mary, reverts to her. And he was very, very wealthy. Like the amount of properties that Edward had bestowed on him was insane. When
Hmm.
you think that he was not of the nobility. Yes, he was knighted by Edward, but the amount of property he had was ridiculous. So that all goes. He loses all his titles, obviously. So he'd lost most of them before he left England as a result of his favour of Jane. Um, and he maintains friends with other people. And two of them are obviously still living in England. Um, One of them says that they're coming over to use the healing waters of somewhere. I can't remember where it was off the top of my head. Um, Another one of his friends is working as an ambassador for Mary, so they're over and they do meet up with them. So him and Cook meet up with these two guys from England. And he is told your wife is now in Antwerp, which she was. But obviously, having lost all the properties, his wife's got nowhere to go now. So in Sheik's mind, he was, I'm going to go get my wife and come back. So that was his plan. So he is assured that he has safe conduct to Antwerp. So they continue on their journey towards Antwerp and they are actually intercepted.
Uh-oh.
And from the records, they were basically pulled off their horses, blindfolded, hands are tied, and basically dragged back to England, where they were put in the tower.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
You may think you know McDonald's drinks, but you don't know them like this. From fruity refreshers like the Strawberry Watermelon Refresher and the Mango Pineapple Refresher with popping boba, to crafted sodas like the Sprite Berry Blast with berry-flavored Sprite topped with cold foam. Who knew ice-cold drinks could be so fire? 6 all-new drinks are here. Try them all, now at McDonald's. Refreshers contain caffeine.
And they're still giving out this reason that it was because he'd outstayed his license. Yeah, okay. But then he starts getting visitors. So 2 of the Queen's chaplains visit him to say, you need to recant. And he's like, nope. And then there's somebody called Feckenham who John Cheke had spent a lot of time debating with this guy. They'd known each other since Cambridge days. At one point, it was the other way around. Feckenham was the one in prison.
Oh.
But he was actually brought out of prison to take part in disputations at Cecil's house. And he was debating against Cheke and Cecil. So, it's quite a close circle, regardless of the differences. And he agrees to listen to him. And he says, I will consider it if I can have a conversation with Reginald Pole, who agrees. So Cheke is brought out of the tower into the presence of Reginald Pole. They have an ongoing debate about religion. And eventually, he is essentially told, you either recant or you burn to death.
Yikes. What a choice to make.
So he does. He says, okay, fine, I will recant. For not so much Mary as an individual, but hopefully this makes sense. For Mary and her council, Reginald Pole, all of that, this is a huge success because Cheke was so respected across Europe that there was letters flying everywhere. Like, I can't believe Cheke has recanted. Like, are we wrong? Like, Peter Martyr, he was writing, like, what? Like, he's recanted? Like, utter disbelief amongst the Protestants that somebody like him had recanted. And then the letters kind of changed to, he must have only done it to get out. Like, I cannot believe that he's serious in recanting. Like, I just cannot believe it. So Cheke then writes to Mary, and he writes this whole confession that is, I accept everything about your religion. I will recant, I do this, I do that, I promise to abide by your laws, I promise to uphold your religion, all of this. The only thing that he actually asks is, can you please spare me a public recantation? To which Mary goes, nah,
I was just gonna say, there's no way they're gonna go for that.
he's too big a fish.
Yeah.
That's what it is. If it had been Mr. Nobody, well, first of all, they're not going to put that much effort into trying to get him to recant, but he's too big a fish to not force to do that. So he has to go in front of the whole council with Mary present and issue a public recantation. To be fair to Mary, he's released. Now, what she does after this, I actually think, do you know what? Fair play to her, because she didn't need to do this. So all the properties that had been taken off him, a lot of them were confiscated monastic lands. So it had been part of the dissolution of the monasteries. Now, we know that Mary's aim was to try and restore a lot of that. And even if she couldn't restore the monasteries because a lot of them were in ruins and that kind of thing, she didn't want those kind of lands being in everyday people's hands. But what she did do was say, I will swap them. And she actually swapped for a lot of land and properties and manors, and the value again made him extremely wealthy, or would have done if he'd have actually got the income from it. But he didn't actually last that long. He literally died the next year.
Oh no.
Yeah, and there's obviously letters from the time from other Protestants will say he died of the distress of having to recant. We know he did regret it. I don't think you can die from that myself, but I'm not a doctor. So he didn't last long, but I think the sad bit is he obviously got all of these properties back. His wife, he left her like over £400 worth of jewels, which for then is a lot of money. She was left rich. Like she had lands. One of the estates that Mary had given him had been split into thirds. It's a bit of a weird one. So essentially the lease was signed into three thirds, obviously. One third was Cheke's, one third was his wife's, and one share was one of his friends, Peter Osborne. When Cheke died, Osborne essentially said, I do not want my share of the income. Like, for your lifetime or whilst you're still bringing the kids up, I'm happy to step back. And he supported the upbringing of his children, like financially. And he even got to the point where when Cheke's heir reached adulthood, he handed the estate over and basically said the same thing. It's yours for your lifetime. So respect to this guy, because Cheke owed him a lot of money by the time he died. He'd been financially supporting him through the whole time he was in prison. While he was abroad, he'd supported him and his family. So really, really good friend. But the sad bit is, she then remarries. Everything that she'd got went to her husband and their children together. So Cheke's own children ended up with barely nothing. Like, they did try and make their own way. Like the eldest, his heir, was kept in the household of Cecil, so he obviously did quite well. Like,
Yeah.
He did die fairly young. He went off to war and didn't come back. But he had quite a nice upbringing considering he'd just lost his dad and all of his inheritance. But yeah, I think through Cheke, we've got obviously Edward. I think the influence on him is clear as day, but also Elizabeth. So Cheke taught Roger Ascham and Cecil, who you could argue were two of the most influential men on Elizabeth's life.
Yeah.
And we don't know it for definite, but we can probably surmise that Elizabeth probably would have spent some time around Cheke when she was visiting Edward or whatever, because, Cheke doesn't seem to have left his side. He even used to go on summer progress with it. Like
Wow.
he'd go back to Cambridge, take part in some of the ongoing disputations, like he'd deliver his debate, and then he'd go off and join Edward wherever he was on his summer progress. So I think Edward actually saw him. I don't think you could say a friend because of the age gap, but almost like a replacement father figure.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to have absolutely adored him.
Yeah.
But I think that influence in religion, in Edward's education, there's absolutely no doubt that Cheke was behind all of that. He was the one that encouraged him to start a journal, which obviously we've got today. So we've got that Cheke to thank for that. And then obviously Elizabeth, the influence on her indirectly, albeit, but yeah. So
Wow.
I think he's one of those figures that when you read all about like the downfall of Lady Jane and Mary, you don't even consider him. But he literally went to the Tower twice and survived twice. He had a wife that annoyed the Lord Protector's wife. Like he annoyed so many people during his lifetime, but just seems to have survived. And not only survived, but became very, very rich
Yeah.
and influenced two monarchs. Well, three actually, because you could argue he influenced Henry, because we know Henry studied Greek as well.
Well, there's one person that you have not brought up that I thought was going to have some connection to him, and that's Catherine Parr.
Yes, so obviously he would have known Catherine through Edward. And the day that Catherine is appointed as regent, when Henry's going off to war, is the same day that Cheke was appointed as Edward's tutor.
Hmm.
So yes, they would have known each other. I don't know how much time he spent with Catherine, because obviously Edward and her weren't always in the same household. Edward had his own
Right.
household, but they most certainly would have known each other. And Catherine's support of education, you can probably see that she would have been very interested in somebody like him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And listening in at what's Edward learning, what books do I need to be reading. Um, so yes, you could probably say that he was somewhat influential on Catherine as well.
Which would make sense at the time period when he was at court. I have to go back too when you mentioned his wife Mary and the money situation and Thomas Seymour, and I seem to remember, and I don't know if it's a letter or if she was questioned. And it's probably fresher to you than it is to me, but I think there was something where she talks about the money being exchanged and what she knew about it.
I think that's how she ends up in trouble with Anne Seymour. Um, it looks like she was sent to Elizabeth's household. Um, and I don't know if you'd word it as a spy, because you're not going to send somebody young and naive to spy for you. But whatever she did there, Anne did not like it. So I don't know if, she became friends with Elizabeth instead and Catherine, or if she took the side of Thomas. I don't know. but she ends up in the bad books of Anne. And Sheik's apology is, yeah, it's definitely worth a read because he is very much like, I'm so sorry, she's young. Please don't blame me for my wife's actions. I will make sure from now, what does he call it? He says something like, I will make sure she is dull and plain from now on, or something like that.
Like it's
But
like
she
so.
actually does quite well for herself. She ends up in Elizabeth's household. So
Oh,
when Elizabeth's queen. So she
they.
does well for
I was gonna
herself.
say they clearly formed some kind of relationship for that to end up at the
Yeah.
end.
I do wish that she could survived Mary's reign because I would love to imagine his impact on Elizabeth if he'd been around.
Yeah.
I think she would have kept him quite close. Knowing how she favoured Cecil, I think she would have kept him close.
I always feel like this is like my fun fact that a lot of people don't realize unless you have studied Edward Seymour, but Cecil was in the household of Edward Seymour for a long time. And I
Yeah.
find that so fascinating. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be surprising because of the reformist values that they both had. But I do find it interesting that he was like, I think he was the secretary for Edward
Yeah.
Seymour. And
I
you
think
see
there's
that.
links everywhere, isn't there? Like you look at like the universities, especially, like you've got Sheik teaching Cecil and Ascham. Then you've got Cecil keeping him updated while he's abroad, marrying his sister.
Yeah.
Um, so and then he comes back and Cecil helps him. He helps his, well, it'd be his nephew. Um, so it all goes round in circles. Then you've got Ascham later on, who then ends up as tutor to Elizabeth, but was loyal to Sheik for his whole life. It's, yeah, in one
Yeah.
little circle.
Definitely. Well, Amy, I feel like I've learned so much about John Cheke today that I didn't know before, and he had a very interesting life, that's for
Bit of a
sure.
whistle stop tour, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is, it's a little teaser to give you an idea of what to expect from Amy's book that will be out next year. And we've talked about some of the subject matter previously, some of the other tutors too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's when you dig into them, I think when you say like tutors, it's like, hmm? Why do we need to know about that? I
Right.
didn't want to, because obviously my first book was Educating the Tudors, which is very much based on what did they learn, blah blah blah. Um, but I didn't want to just focus on that. I wanted to know who these people actually were. So I've tried to, obviously I can't ignore what they taught the Tudors. I can't ignore it completely, but I've tried to base it on who the men actually were, where they came from, how far up they rose. Um, some of them worked behind the scenes, so they were never actually appointed as a royal tutor, but you could never say they didn't influence education at all because half of them probably wouldn't be there if it wasn't for certain people. Um, but yeah, I think some of them are really interesting, and Sheik's not the only one that went to the tower.
That's right. Uh, These guys were way more than just a name on the page. And so I'm glad that you're diving into their lives because that's the part of history that I'm interested in. Like, who were these people? Not just like what did they do, but who were they? And I feel like you painted a good picture of who John Sheik was today. And the rest we'll leave for the book that's coming up, right?
Yeah.
Well, Amy, thank you so much. I enjoyed going back to like an interview format with you, although I didn't really ask you a whole lot of questions, but
No, I just rambled at you. I just talked at you for a while. I'm sorry.
no,
If you
I
can't tell, he's become one of my favorite people. He's just fascinating.
I was able to come back like right at the beginning when you were talking about the household and I was thinking about 1544 and I was like, "Oh, that's while Catherine Parr was in." And I was like, "I don't have the opportunity to ask the question right now, so I'll just wait till the end."
I think that his relationship with the Seymour brothers was quite interesting. Um, I feel for him a little bit because I feel like he did get stuck in the middle of which way do I turn?
Yeah.
And Thomas actually did ask him to support his appointment as governor, and Sheik didn't want to get involved because he could end up in a serious amount of trouble if he gets involved in this. So he just told Edward. He just told him. He just said, "Look, this has happened. Your problem to deal with. Like
Yeah. I feel
your
like
young teenage self needs to deal with that. Not
yeah,
me as an adult. It's not my problem, mate."
there's just too much of that, around the reign of Edward VI and the Seymour brothers, with the Seymour brothers bickering and Thomas going around telling people the things that he wants, thinking he can trust them. And
To
then
be
they
fair
all,
though, that both Seymour brothers were smart because if you want to get a quiet word in the ear of Edward, without approaching him yourself or without anyone else knowing, Sheik is going to be the guy to do that because he's always with him.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like Thomas Seymour knew how to get things to his nephew. He definitely had figured that out. I feel like maybe part of that was Catherine Parr helping
Mm,
him see. And then, of course, once she died, then he was like a lost little puppy and just went crazy and started
yeah.
blabbering to everybody about everything. And that's what got him in trouble at the end.
Yeah. Mhm.
He's like, I want my nephew to rule on his own. I think he's old enough to rule on his own, but also secretly, I want more power. Oh gosh, we're not going to turn this into the episode on the Seymour brothers, but
No,
I
no,
love the
let's not
connections.
do that.
Yeah, I love the connections. Well, Amy, thank you so much for teaching us today, and I will see you again next week.
Yes, you will indeed.
Thank you for listening to Off the Record on Tudor's Dynasty and Beyond. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following the podcast. And if you'd like to support the work that goes into researching and creating these episodes, you can find extra content and ways to join the community through Patreon and Substack. And don't forget, you can now comment directly on episodes over on Spotify. I love reading every single one. Until next time, stay curious, and I'll see you back here for more royal drama and real history.